First, a brief introduction. Dr. Henry Green, Professor Henry Green of the University of Miami in Florida. Henry is a very special guy. He has a doctorate, I think, in Ethiopian philology from Oxford University. And when he moved to America, he's from Canada originally. And when he started the University of Miami, he got into more contemporary things. Henry is a mover and a shaker. He had the Mosaic Project, a traveling exhibition in Florida about the history of the Jews in Florida. Of course, there's the Sephardic component about the politician Yuli Levy. And Henry now, his flag is the Voices of Sfarad, an interviewing project, which he's been doing for good years. He's raised a lot of money. It's very professional. And it's been very effective about interviewing the Jews from the Arab and Muslim worlds. And his videos, his promotional videos that he's made are very good. He's preparing a book now. So Avraham and Henry work out the presentation now.
Thank you. Thank you, Yitzhak. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to just first thank Yitzhak and this celebration of the Sephardi. Yitzhak and I met, could be 30 years ago more, through Gloria Mound, who is the founder and director of the Institute for Marranos and Anusim Studies. I think it was about 30 years ago. And we've collaborated in all kinds of ways on various kinds of projects as we have tried to raise the consciousness of the Ashkenazi to the Sephardi. So I very much appreciate what's happened today. I've been listening. You haven't seen me visually, but we've had a quick overview here of a marathon of historical presentations. Shoshana and Judith with singing. We've had new archaeological finds. We've had a VIP introduction to a new Sephardi museum in Morocco and more. So what I want to do today is basically present the project Sephardi Voices. Yitzhak was a bit inaccurate, but I'll just correct this. I went to do my master's in Israel 50 years ago, and I ended up being, I was very naive. I had a very good Jewish education, and Sephardi in my education in Canada ended in 1492. I had no idea of the Sephardi in terms of 20th century living in the Islamic world. And so the basic story is that there was a protest movement, Pantrim Shacharim, and I thought I was, helping the cause in America. And the next thing I knew, I was helping Biton and the Moroccan Jews in terms of the second generation protesting their discrimination. And a few years later, when I went back to do my PhD, which was about the origins of Gnosticism and early Christian movement, what happened was that I got a job as a sociologist, and I ended up writing a book about the Sephardi, about the Mizrahi being integrated that came out of the Golda Meir Commission. So I wrote a project with Etgar, early childhood education, Manof, had to do with the integration of juvenile delinquents. It had Nachlaot, the integration of the schools, and on and on and on. And so for really the last 40 years, I've been very involved in both Israel Sephardi and the diaspora Sephardi. And what happened about nearly 20 years ago was I went to do some Holocaust research at the Shoah collection. And what I found was that there were, yes, some Sephardi interviews of Salonika Jews, but there were less than 100 interviews of Jews of Sephardi from Arab lands. Hardly any from Libya, hardly any from the Jews who lived under the Vichy government in North Africa, nothing of the Farhud. And so what I decided, Pirkei Avot, if not now, when, we should collect the stories of the Sephardi that were displaced from Arab lands. So I began this project in order to do what Spielberg did, which is really a audiovisual history to document and preserve the testimonies and the history of the Jews who lived in Arab lands, but rather for a Holocaust, it really was in terms of their displacement in the wake of the spread of Zionism and the establishment of the state of Israel. There were about 850,000 Jews that lived between the Tigris, Euphrates, and the Atlantic Ocean in 1948. There were, if you add Iran in post 79, you're talking about close to 1 million Jews that were confronted by issues of human rights, lost their citizenship, were displaced, many becoming refugees. So what I took on was a project in trying to collect these stories in order to preserve the history and the legacy, but also to create pride for the next generation so that they would be able to talk about their history and pass it on, process, change our understanding of Jewish civilization. It's not just an Ashkenazi story, it's also a modern Sephardi story. So what's happened over the last 15 years is I've collected about nearly 500 interviews. They're done mostly in French and English, Hebrew, some are in Italian, and they're going to be housed at the National Library of Israel. They'll be free and accessible. It includes interviews that run anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. They're done very professionally. We do portraits also of the people, and we scan their documents, which includes anything from deeds to family photographs, etc. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of documents that have never been seen before. So if Avram can show the first little video, it gives you a sense of what Sephardi Voice is about. Avram?
What is that?
Je suis née le 1er août 1947 au Caire, en Égypte.
So you begin with a question of, tell me something about your family. What you're trying to do is ultimately capture in some kind of way a life that does not exist anymore.
More than 850,000 Jews from North Africa, the Middle East, and Iran fled or were expelled from their home countries during the 20th century.
Please join me in welcoming diplomat, humanitarian, Ambassador Danny Ayalon.
Anybody heard of the Jewish refugee problem? Close to 900,000 Jewish refugees also had to flee. They were living there for centuries in Arab countries, and they mostly were expelled to the state of Israel.
I was born Chaim Wahni.
Maria, Megna,
Tufik,
Cynthia,
David,
Shalom.
My name is Nina.
I was born in Beirut.
I was born in Fez, Morocco.
On the river Tigris.
Tripoli, Libya. And my mother was born in Lebanon.
I had a beautiful life in Libya.
The year I was born was still under the rule of Turkey.
I'm a Jew from Morocco for 600 years.
So this gives you an overview that what we're doing is collecting stories, testimonies. It's the story of what the life was like if they lived in Casablanca or Cairo or Baghdad or in Kurdistan. Who were their friends? What was Shabbat like? What school they went to. Then the story of leaving, the displacement, and then the story of integration, resettlement in another country. And these are very, very comprehensive interviews. In the library, they'll be free and accessible at the National Library of Israel. Each country, as part of their multicultural agenda, will also have the interviews of their country. So for example, the interviews will be at the British Library. The interviews will be at the National Library of Canada. Now, the reason we do this is that Sephardi Voices is not interested in building bricks and mortars. The Shoah collection costs money at the University of Southern California to use. We want it to be free and accessible for anyone. It includes transcripts. It includes the actual audio, visual that you will be able to see at the library. So, or online. So it's really a way to build an educational kit for policymakers, for researchers, for families. And out of it comes an incredible educational toolkit that includes possibly films, articles, books, exhibits, and curriculum being the most important. So what I want to do is just, in my short presentation, is show you one of the movies we made. It's a short movie called What We Left Behind that dealt with the Iraqi Jewish archives. When America went into Iraq, they found thousands and thousands of documents in the Iraqi intelligence building. They were flooded. They were brought back to the States. There's a big battle going on. Should they remain in the States or not? But there were some documents, Sidurim, Torah scrolls, that were pasul, that were damaged. And we were asked if we would create a short documentary to preserve that process. And so here is an example of a film that records this burying of the pasul documents of the Iraqi archives. Avram?
Can't hear you.
I said, can I talk to you? You're busy.
Oh, you can talk to me.
Okay,
These seem to be the only vestige of our
Okay.
history.
if you leave before I'm off in the morning, please try
We
not to
left
leave
so
me.
much behind.
I'll probably be leaving.
This is our heritage.
after you
This
wake
is
up, but not
our
long after.
religion. It's our culture. It's something to
What?
really be proud
Stay
of.
over it, John.
I'll see how he's doing and if it works out.
If it works out, have stuff with your case. Like when you're essential.
If I leave here at 10:30, it takes an hour to get to your father's. I have to figure out when these people can meet me to give me my credit card. I need to do some more scanning at your father's as well. I'll finish it late.
See you last transmission, Bronco 469.
So 11, 12, 2. Might not get to John's till 3, 4 o'clock.
When we got to Baghdad, my colleague and I went into where the books and documents had been placed, and mold smell just hit you in the face. And we could see that everything was in quite bad condition, so there was a lot of damage that had occurred.
The material was confiscated from the Jewish community starting in 1975 when two intelligence officers came to the Center for the Jewish Community in Baghdad and decided to confiscate whatever they found there. The most important part were sermons given by rabbis of the Iraqi Jewish community in the 19th century. The oldest among them goes
Avram, put yourself
back
on
to
mute.
1568.
The preservation process involves stabilizing the books and documents. First step was to remove the mold so that they could be handled. And from there, each one was assessed to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? We needed to make it stable enough that it could be handled. Many things had to be repaired also. Few things were fully treated and were washed and resewn and made into new bindings.
Among the material that were found were Torah scrolls and Megillat Esther. Their letters were wiped out. They were torn apart. Because of their holiness, we treat them the way we treat regular Torah scrolls with best of respect.
This is in compliance with the commandment, Lo tisa et shem Adonai Elohecha lashau. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Therefore, prayer books which are no longer usable are not trashed or burned, but are buried in the consecrated ground of a Jewish cemetery.
Iraq would like to make a statement to the world that the Jews were an important part of the Baghdad history, and we would like to preserve that. We would like to cherish that history and pay our full respect to that.
Just to help hold it.
Good night, honey.
It's a very moving day to see some vestige of our grandparents and parents and great forefathers all being buried because it's ruined now. There was a time when it was thriving. They studied from it and they prayed from it. It's not at all a happy day. It's a very emotional day. It brings out all the hurt we went through. It brings out all the feelings of rejection, the feelings of being denied our rights, the feeling of being denied our heritage and our religion. And the practice of our religion. I mean, we were scared. At least we have it. At least it's here. At least it's buried somewhere where it will not be desecrated. And that's what we are afraid of. You don't know in whose hands they'll fall. It's a very momentous day today. And it was worth coming all the way here for that.
So the first thing I want to mention is that all the images that you see at the beginning and the end of that film are from the people we have interviewed. And you can see they go way back, more than 100 years. We have photos, images that go back into the 1860s. It's about 150 years old. We have deeds, all kinds of things that are used by the Israeli government now for litigation, etc. The second thing, and that I really want to emphasize, is that taking off my academic hat for a second, it's a human rights story. One talks about Syrians today. One talks about Palestinians. One talks about Bosnians, South Africans. Well, the Sephardi, their displacement from the Arab lands, the Islamic lands, is also a human rights story. And it too needs to be told. And it's part of the multicultural story of nations. And so the second illustration that I'm going to show, which is very short, is that we are about to publish a book that's called Sephardi Voices, The Expulsion of Jews from Arab Lands. And what we've done, it's a coffee table book. And what we've done is we've taken about 30 stories of people, and what we're doing is we're using their stories in order to give you a sense, to give the reader a sense of what happened pre-1948 and then after 1948. And people from Egypt, people from Morocco, people from Yemen. And in each of these cases, what the voices are accompanied with are the images that they've given us that's part of the collection. So we have some that are there because as a synagogue was burning, one didn't take a picture and we had to reach out into Associated Press or something, but it's really their story in their voices. And then what we've also done is create a photo gallery of many of the other people we have interviewed. And so it's a little video of about 30 seconds, a kind of promo. But what I'm hoping from this presentation in part is we're going to be doing a speaking tour through the publisher. And we're going to start off in Israel, the beginning of November, and then go to London. And it's connected also with the bookstores like Stamansky or Foyles in the United States. It's, you know, the major centers, New York, San Francisco, LA, whatever, Barnes and Nobles, Canada, Indigo. It's also going to be tied to Yom Plitim, November 30th. I don't know if any of you know, but in November in 2014, Israel passed a new annual memorial celebration day called Yom Plitim, Refugee Day, both to memorialize and yet honor and celebrate the heritage of the Sephardi Mizrahi. And so this book will also be part of this annual event. So Avram, if you could just show this one, and it's also an illustration by part of the toolkit.
We used to be scared to go out because we were
One evening, the police came and arrested my father.
A bomb went into the front of the synagogue.
My brother went to the roof and they shot him.
You have no choice but to leave.
They kicked me out with all my
It's
family.
the end of the Jewish
At the
life.
beginning, it was a shock.
I think all the Jewish people are surviving.
I'm a Jew from Morocco for 600 years.
So my presentation's a bit different than the others in the sense that I've used much more visual and rather than PowerPoint and talking. And what I really want to emphasize is that so many of you who are reaching out to the communities, that if you know of people who would like to be interviewed, we have limited funds, but we very much want to capture their story before people pass. For example, Shlomo Hillel, we have an amazing story from him so many images. And unfortunately, he passed a short time ago. Naim Katan, so many of these people who are so central to our Sephardi heritage and to the establishment of the State of Israel. And so if you know people in various ways, Judy Romani, I mean, there's so many of you who are doing amazing stuff. And if you can help us in identifying people that we can interview, I would very much appreciate it. So thank you, Yitzhak, for the opportunity to share this with this wonderful group that you've put together.
All right. Thank you, Henry, very much for all of your efforts for the presentation.